She couldn't run. She couldn't fight. She had nothing except the courage to throw herself between a 19-year-old girl and the most dangerous man in the city, one broken woman, one cold-blooded crime lord, and one impossible moment that neither of them could walk away from unchanged. What happens when the man who could destroy your life becomes the only one willing to save it? Welcome to a channel where powerful men learn what love truly costs, stories of mafia bosses, unexpected kindness, and the families we build from the wreckage of broken lives. This story will remind you that real strength was never about how fast you can run, it's about how long you can stand. If this moves something in you, hit like, drop your city in the comments, and subscribe because every week we bring you a story worth staying for.
For 3 weeks, the lights at Sal's diner had been flickering. Management, a single tired man who could barely afford to keep the fryers on, promised to fix them. So the lights just buzzed and stuttered, bathing the night shift in a sickly yellow glow. Lena Hayes didn't notice anymore. She moved through the late hours with a practiced limp, her left leg dragging just enough for new customers to stare and regulars to look away. It was shattered 4 years ago by a drunk driver. After 3 surgeries and 14 pins, she was left with a permanent limp and a deep ache that flared up whenever she was on her feet too long, which was every single day. "Table 9 needs ketchup," Marcus yelled from the grill, his hands moving with the ease of long practice. He'd been working at Sal's for 15 years, and the exhaustion showed in the lines around his eyes. And Sal's locked himself in the office again. Lena felt her grip tighten on the coffee pot. How long this time? An hour and a half. That was not a good sign. A locked office meant calls Sal didn't want anyone to hear, the kind that left his hands shaking. "Do you know what it's about?" she asked quietly. Marcus looked at her, his expression a mix of pity and fear. "Money. What else is there?" The dinner crowd, all 11 of them, had mostly cleared out, leaving only the usual late-night customers. Old Joe was at the counter, doctoring his coffee with so much cream and sugar, it was basically a milkshake. A trucker named Dale was finishing a slice of apple pie in booth 7, and Emma, the new waitress, was wiping down clean tables with the nervous energy of someone who needed every single penny of her paycheck. Emma was only 19. She reminded Lena of herself before the accident, before the mountain of medical debt, before she realized the world doesn't stop for you just because you are broken. "Are you okay?" Emma asked, appearing beside her. Her young face was filled with a genuine concern that made her seem even younger. "Fine, just tired." "You're always tired." Emma started scrubbing a non-existent spot on the counter. "When was the last time you took a day off?" "Can't afford it." "But you're limping more than usual. Maybe you should sit for a minute." The front door opened. 3 men entered, and the diner suddenly felt cold. They wore suits that cost more than Lena made in 6 months. They were charcoal gray and dark blue, tailored with a precision that screamed money. But it was not their expensive clothes that made Lena's stomach twist into a knot. It was their movements. They were like sharks in a fish tank, scanning the room for any sign of weakness, owning the space they walked into. The man in the lead was younger, maybe in his early 30s, with a handsome face that belonged on a magazine cover. He had sharp cheekbones, cold blue eyes, and dark hair that was perfectly styled. He looked around Sal's diner like it was something unpleasant he had scraped off his shoe. "We are here to see Sal." It was not a question or a request. It was a command, delivered in a voice as smooth as expensive liquor and just as dangerous. Marcus froze at the grill, a spatula hanging in the air. Emma turned pale, her dish rag shaking. Old Joe became intensely focused on stirring his coffee. Lena managed to find her voice. "He's in a meeting. Can I?" "You can get him," the man said with a smile that was all sharp edges. "Now would be good." "I'll go," Emma whispered, already starting for the back. No! Lena grabbed her wrist. A powerful instinct told her to keep this girl far away from these men. I'll take care of it. She limped toward the office, feeling their 3 sets of eyes on her with every difficult step. Each one felt like a confession of her own weakness. The office door was thin. She could hear Sal's voice, high-pitched and frantic. I understand. I know I am late, but I just need 1 more week. I swear I can get it. I just need... Lena knocked softly. Sal? The desperate pleading stopped. After a moment of shuffling, the door opened a crack, and Sal's face appeared. He looked gray, sweaty, and a decade older than he was that morning. There are some men here for you, Lena said in a low voice. He shut his eyes as if he had just heard a death sentence. Tell them 5 minutes, please. Sal, what is going on? Just 5 minutes, Lena. Please. She walked back out to the dining area. The 3 men had taken up positions like they had rehearsed it. One was blocking the exit, another was at the counter, cutting off the path to the kitchen. The leader stood in the middle of the room as if he owned it. Emma was hiding behind the cash register, her knuckles white. He needs 5 minutes, Lena stated. He has had 3 months. The leader glanced at his watch. A Rolex, of course. Time is up. Look, I do not know what this is about, but... No, he interrupted her sharply. You do not. So I suggest you go back to pouring coffee and let the grown-ups talk. A hot flash of anger went through Lena's chest. For 24 years, people had dismissed her because of her leg, her job, her life. She usually just took it. But something about this man, the easy cruelty in his tone and the way he looked at Emma like she was an object, woke something fierce inside her. This is a diner, she said, her voice shaking but firm. It is not whatever kind of place you are used to doing business in, so you can either order something or you can leave. The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. Even the buzzing light seemed to hold its breath. The man slowly turned his head, studying her like a scientist examining a strange bug. What is your name? Lena. Lena, he repeated, the name, tasting it. Do you have any idea who I am? Should I? The man by the door made a noise that was half a chuckle, half a threat. My name, the leader said, speaking each word slowly and clearly, is Victor Kane. The name hit her like a punch to the gut. Even Lena, who tried her best to ignore the news and live a small, quiet life, knew that name. Victor Kane, the phantom in the expensive suit who secretly ran half the city. The man politicians were afraid to mention, and criminals were terrified to cross. The reason people locked their doors at night. And she had just told Victor Kane to order a coffee or get out. I see you have heard of me. Victor's smile was sharp. Good. That will save us some time. Here is what is going to happen, Lena. Sal is going to walk out of that office in the next 60 seconds. He is going to give me the $50,000 he owes me, plus all the interest he has racked up for 3 months. Then my associates and I will leave, and you can all continue your night. Simple, clean, and nobody gets hurt. $50,000. The number was impossible. Lena had about $700 in her savings, and that took her 2 years to save. And if he does not have it? Her voice was steadier than she felt. Then things get unpleasant, Victor said, as if he were talking about a change in the weather. And nobody wants that. The office door creaked open. Sal came out, looking like he had aged 20 years in 20 minutes. His shirt was soaked with sweat, and his hands shook as he held onto the door frame. Mr. Kane. His voice was a broken whisper. I know I am late. I know I should have had it. I just need a little more time. 2 more weeks, I swear. You needed 3 months, Sal. I gave you 3 months. Business has been slow. The equipment keeps failing. I had to replace the big freezer, the health inspector. That is not my problem. Victor's voice stayed calm, which was somehow more terrifying than if he had shouted. Do you have any idea how many businesses in this city owe me money, Sal? Can you imagine what would happen if I let every person with a sad story decide when to pay me back? Please, Sal begged, and Lena felt a desperate urge to look away, but she couldn't. I have money, not all of it, but I have 30,000 in the safe. That is more than half. If you just give me 2 more weeks for the rest. 2 more weeks becomes 2 more months. 2 months becomes never. Victor's eyes were like chips of ice. Do you think I run a charity? Do you think I built my entire enterprise by being soft? I will get it. I swear on my life I will get every single penny. Your life? Victor seemed to think about this, tilting his head. An interesting choice for collateral. Then he moved, so smoothly that she barely saw the gun appear in his hand. He wasn't pointing it at anyone. It was just there, a dark and heavy piece of reality. Emma let out a small, strangled gasp from behind the register. Here is my counteroffer, Victor said, his voice casual, even with the weapon in his hand. You give me the 30,000 now, in cash. And to cover the difference, his eyes swept across the room like a searchlight, locking onto Emma. I'll take her. The world went silent. No. The word shot from Lena's mouth before her mind could object. No, you cannot. She is just a child. She is a commodity. Victor's voice was cold, like he was talking about a chair. Young, attractive, and obviously desperate. Or she would not be in this dive. I know several places that would pay a high price for Lena moved. She did not recall deciding to do it. She did not remember her legs protesting as she lunged forward. She only remembered placing herself between Victor Kane and Emma, her arms spread wide as if she could protect the girl from a man who ran an empire on brutality and fear. Touch her, Lena said, her voice trembling with a mix of terror and rage that almost felt like bravery. And you will have to deal with me first. For 3 long seconds, no one moved. No one even breathed. Then Victor laughed. It was a horrible sound. It was real amusement mixed with something darker, something that said he knew this game and how it always ended. You. He holstered his weapon with a slow, deliberate motion, as if making a statement. You are going to stop me. If I must. Lena, do not. Sal's voice was thin. Please, just look at yourself. Victor moved in closer. Lena stood her ground while every nerve screamed for her to flee. You can hardly stand. Your legs are shaking. You are terrified. What do you possibly think you can do? Whatever I have to. They were so close she could see the thin scar that cut through his left eyebrow. She could smell the expensive cologne, which likely cost more than her rent. And she saw the total lack of fear or hesitation in his eyes. This was a man who had never faced anyone who could harm him. He never had to. Brave, he whispered, looking at her face. Incredibly foolish, but brave. His hand shot out, quick and practiced, and gripped her arm. It was not hard enough to leave a mark, just enough to show the immense difference in their power, just enough to make his point. And then he pulled. Lena's bad leg buckled immediately. It always did when she shifted her weight incorrectly. When the old injury burned hot and fierce, when the metal and scars holding her together screamed that she was broken, she collapsed, barely catching herself before her face met the filthy linoleum. A sharp pain shot up her spine. The floor was cold on her hands. She landed at Victor Kane's feet, looking up at the man who could ruin everything she cared about with just one call. Please. The word was raw, filled with nothing but desperation. Please, I cannot run. I cannot fight. I can do nothing. But do not take her. She is 19 years old. She has a younger brother who relies on her. She is saving for community college. Please. The silence hung in the air, pierced only by the hum of the lights and Emma's quiet sobs from behind the counter. Victor looked down at her. His face was a complete blank, a mask that showed nothing. What happened to your leg? The question was so out of place that Lena almost did not respond. A car crash 4 years ago. And you still work standing up every night. I do not have a choice. Everyone has a choice. But his tone had shifted. It had softened just a little. Just enough to hear. You could have remained silent. Let me have her, spared yourself the trouble, but you did not. No. Why not? Because she is 19. Lena's voice cracked. Because she is like I was. Because no one was there for me when I needed help, and I will not let that happen to someone else if I can prevent it. Victor crouched, lowering himself to her eye level. This near, she saw his eyes were not cold at all. They were guarded, disciplined eyes that had learned to hide all humanity so deep that only pieces were left. "What is your name?" he asked again, as if the answer was more important now. "Lena Hayes." Lena Hayes. He said it as if he were memorizing it. "How long have you been here?" 3 years. "Do you have family?" The question stung worse than the fall. "No, it is just me." Victor shot up and turned to Sal. "The safe. Open it." Sal hurried to obey, his hands trembling so badly he fumbled with the cash. Bills flew onto the counter, wads of 50s and hundreds bound by rubber bands. $30,000 in dirty cash, likely every good night the diner had in the last year. Victor ignored it. He took out his phone, typed a quick message, and waited. 30 seconds passed, and the door swung open. One of his men came in with a leather briefcase that was probably worth more than Sal's car. He put it on the counter and opened the latches. Inside was more money than Lena had ever seen. Stacks of $100 bills, crisp and new and endless. "Count out 50,000, Victor commanded. "Put it in the safe." No one moved. No one understood. "I said count it out." His voice turned to steel. "Now." The man obeyed like a machine, taking out stack after stack and putting them into Sal's old safe. The sound of money being counted filled the room. It should have been a good sound, but it felt strange, like witnessing a scene from a movie. When he was done, Victor faced Sal again. "Your debt is settled, in full. The interest is covered too." Sal's mouth moved, but no words came out. "What?" Emma's voice was a faint whisper. "What is happening? Think of it as a gift." Victor's eyes shifted to Lena, still on the floor. From the girl who cannot run, but stood up anyway. He then walked to the door, his men following like dark shadows, their fine suits vanishing into the darkness. The door chimed happily as they exited, a strangely normal sound after everything that just occurred. The silence they left was overpowering. Marcus was the first to react. He hurried to Lena, helping her stand with gentle hands. "Are you all right? Did he hurt you?" "I am fine." Her leg protested, throbbing with a familiar ache. "I am fine." Sal sank into a booth, his eyes fixed on the open safe as if it might vanish. "I do not get it. I do not. Why did he? I do not know." Lena leaned on the counter, trying to make sense of it all. "I do not know." Emma wrapped her arms around Lena's neck, crying into her shoulder. "You saved me. You saved my life. I did nothing. You challenged him. You." Emma stepped back, her young face wet with tears. "No one challenges Victor Kane. No one. But Lena had, and somehow, against all odds, she was still standing." The rest of the night was a haze. Sal kept touching the money as if expecting it to disappear. Marcus kept asking if Lena was really okay. Emma could not stop weeping and saying thank you. By sunrise, the entire neighborhood had heard the story. People came in just to see the diner Victor Kane had spared, and to see the waitress who faced down a mob boss and survived. Lena cleaned tables, poured coffee, and tried to act like her world had not been turned upside down. She was wiping the counter when Marcus came to her side, a worried look on his face. "You must be careful," he said softly. "What do you mean by that?" "Men like Victor Kane do not give things away for free. There is always a catch." He said it was a gift. There are no gifts in his world. Marcus looked toward the door as if Victor might return at any moment. "Whatever he is planning, just be careful. Please." Lena agreed, but she was already thinking the same thing. Men like Victor Kane were not merciful, which meant he was after something. The only question was what. 3 days later, a man in an expensive suit came into the diner during the lunch rush. He was younger than Victor, maybe 30, with light brown hair and a professional smile that made you think he sold expensive cars. He ordered a coffee he never touched and waited for Lena's section to empty before he walked over. "Miss Hayes, my name is James Carter. I am an employee of Mr. Kane." Of course he was. Lena put down the coffee pot she was holding. "What does he want?" "He wants to offer you a position." James pointed to an empty booth. "May I?" Every part of her wanted to refuse, to leave, to act like this was not happening. But her leg ached from a double shift, and she was too curious, a dangerous thing. Lina took a seat. He slid a business card her way. It was thick, with raised letters, the kind that screamed money. "Mr. Kane saw what you did the other night. He was impressed by your bravery, your loyalty to a stranger. He wants to help you." "Help me how?" she asked. "By giving you a life without pain, a chance to walk normally again." His words were a shock. Lena's hand automatically covered the bad leg beneath her work pants. "That is not possible," she said, her voice flat. "I have seen doctors. The damage is forever." "You have seen the doctors your cheap insurance paid for," he corrected. "The kind that just patch you up." James leaned in. "Mr. Kane knows the best surgeons in America. He has access to new treatments and therapy that gets real results. He will pay for everything. The surgery, your recovery, all of it." "Why?" The word was sharp. "Why would he do that for me?" "Because he can, and because he wants to. No one does that for nothing." "You are 100% right," James said smoothly. "In return, he asks for your time. 1 dinner a week with Mr. Kane. Just to talk, that is all." Lena just looked at him. "That is it? Dinner? That is it. I do not believe you. I understand why you are doubtful. I would be too." He produced a second card with a doctor's information. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen. She is one of the best surgeons for this kind of injury. She is waiting for you tomorrow at 10 in the morning for a meeting. Listen to her. Get another opinion on your leg. Then you can make your choice. And if I refuse the dinners, then you say, 'No, Mr. Kane never makes people do things they do not want to.'" James got up, buttoning his expensive jacket effortlessly. "But think about it, Miss Hayes. This is an opportunity to fix your life. No more pain, no more limping, no more strangers staring, no more sleepless nights worrying when your leg will finally fail you for good. All he wants is a little of your time each week, a conversation with someone who expects nothing but the truth." He placed the cards on the table and left. Lena stayed there for 20 minutes, just looking at them. Dr. Sarah Chen, the chance to be whole again. The price was dinner with a gangster once a week. It was crazy, reckless, and likely a setup. But later that night in her tiny apartment, with her leg aching through the medicine, she could not get it out of her head. The idea of walking without pain, not needing to plan every move, every trip, every single hour she was standing. The thought of maybe, just maybe, having a regular life. At 2 in the morning, she dialed the number. A polite receptionist picked up right away, not sounding at all surprised by the late call. "Dr. Chen's office, how can I help you?" My name is Lena Hayes. Someone told me to call for an appointment." "Yes, of course, Miss Hayes. We have you down for 10 a.m. tomorrow. The meeting should last about 2 hours. Will you need directions?" "No, Wait. I did not agree to anything yet. Mr. Kane was very sure you would call," the receptionist said with a warm, friendly voice. "So, will we see you at 10? Lena knew she should. Hang up the phone. She should have said no. "Yes," she heard her own voice say. 10 a.m. "Wonderful. We will see you then." The call ended. Lena was left in the darkness, looking up at the ceiling, asking herself what she had just done. Dr. Sarah Chen's office was in a neighborhood Lena never went to. The buildings were all shiny glass and metal. The people wore expensive clothes like they were battle gear. It was a place where poverty was simply erased from the landscape. The clinic was on the top 3 floors of a tower with a waiting room that felt more like a fancy hotel. Lena nearly walked right back out, but the receptionist spotted her. Then Dr. Chen came out. She was a woman in her 50s with gentle eyes, graying hair tied back neatly, and an aura of complete confidence. Lena Hayes, she said, holding out her hand. I am Sarah Chen. Please come with me. The exam was very detailed. She had x-rays, an MRI, and tests on how much she could move. The doctor asked about the accident, the operations, her pain, and what she could no longer do. Dr. Chen wrote everything down quickly, asking smart questions that showed she was really listening. At last, she leaned back, holding a tablet, and looked at Lena's scans. The first doctors did a decent job, she began cautiously. Considering what they had to work with, they saved your leg and got you walking. That is impressive. But they only stabilized you. They did not heal you. Dr. Chen showed her a picture, pointing to spots Lena did not understand. There is a lot of scar tissue here. The metal pins are in the right place, but not perfectly. And this spot here, she said, highlighting a section. There is nerve damage that they never fixed. Can you fix it? Dr. Chen looked right at her. I believe so. It would mean 3 operations over 18 months, with a lot of physical therapy in between. I will be honest. It is going to hurt. The recovery will be tough. But if you do the work... She trailed off for a moment. I think I can get you to 90% of your old strength, maybe even 95. 90%. Lena had lived for 4 years believing 50% was her new normal. How much would that cost? The number Dr. Chen said made her feel dizzy. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe $1 million when all was said and done. Mr. Kane has offered to pay for everything, Dr. Chen went on. Operations, therapy, medicine, all of it. You would not owe a penny. And what does he want from me? That is a conversation for you and him. The doctor's face showed no emotion, but I can tell you this. I have worked with his group before. He has paid for treatments for many people who had no other hope. And as far as I know, he has never demanded anything wrong in exchange. As far as you know. I am required by law to report crimes, Lena. If I thought something illegal was happening, I would have to call the police. I have not. That should mean something to you. Lena left the clinic with a packet of papers and a million thoughts. She walked for hours, her bad leg throbbing, thinking about the choice. 90%. No more constant pain. No more limp. No longer being the broken person everyone felt sorry for. And the cost was just dinner with Victor Kane once a week. It was a crazy idea. But living the rest of her life half broken, working a terrible job for almost no money, just feeling her body fail, that was also crazy. That night, she called James Carter. He picked up immediately. Miss Hayes, I need to know why, she said, skipping any greeting. The real reason, not the nice story. Why pick me? There was a pause. I believe Mr. Kane should be the one to tell you that. Your first dinner is on Friday. A car will get you at 7. I have not agreed to that. Have you not? He was right. She had agreed in her heart the second she left Dr. Chen's office, feeling a spark of hope for the first time in 4 years. Fine, she said. Friday at 7. Perfect. One last thing, Miss Hayes. Mr. Kane respects honesty more than anything. Any questions you have, you should ask him directly. He will like that. The call ended. Lena remained standing in her small apartment, the phone still against her ear, looking at her own reflection in the dark glass. She had just made a dinner date with the city's most feared man, with no clue what was about to happen. Friday came, feeling like it was meant to be. Lena stood before her closet, a tiny space really, looking at clothes that felt all wrong for dinner with a crime lord. She had only one dress that was even close to appropriate. It was a simple black one she had bought for her mother's funeral 3 years ago. She had only worn it twice since, for job interviews she did not get. It would have to be good enough. The car pulled up at exactly 7, not a second sooner or later. It was a smooth black car with windows so dark, was tinted so she could not see out. A man in his 40s drove it. He opened her door without a word and stood with the patience of a man who had done this many times. Lena paused on the sidewalk, her bad leg aching from a shift that went 2 hours over because a coworker called out sick. "Miss Hayes," the driver said softly, "Mr. Kane does not appreciate being kept waiting." She entered the car. The inside smelled of leather and wealth, that unique scent that comes from things that are needlessly expensive. The seats were warm even though the night was mild. Classical music played from hidden speakers. It was the kind of car that made her very aware of every spot on her uniform, every mark on her shoes, and every way she did not fit in. They drove across the city as dusk turned into night, leaving her familiar neighborhood for places she had only seen in films. Mansions were set far back from the street. They had gates that likely cost more than her yearly salary. Trees were planted in perfect lines like soldiers guarding the rich from the reality of poverty. The restaurant had no sign, only a plain door painted in glossy black, with sculpted bushes on each side that must need a full-time gardener. A valet appeared as soon as the car pulled up, calling the driver by his name. The inside was quiet and elegant, with low, warm lighting and fresh flowers on every table. It was the kind of silence that comes from excellent soundproofing and patrons who know to speak in low voices. A hostess in a dress that probably cost 2 months of Lena's pay led her through the dining room without saying a word, her heels tapping on the marble floors. They walked past tables where people sat who clearly belonged in this world. Men wore suits that fit like a second skin, while women were draped in jewels that glittered with their every move. Not one person glanced up when Lena went by. She felt completely invisible. The hostess guided her to a private room at the back, behind a heavy wooden door. She knocked softly, opened it, and motioned for Lena to go inside. Victor Kane rose to his feet as she entered. He looked different from how he did at the diner, less like a hunter and more like a man who had put away his armor for the night. He had taken off his suit jacket. His sleeves were pushed up to his elbows, showing strong forearms and a tattoo on his left wrist she couldn't quite see. The gun was probably still on him, concealed somewhere, but for now, he looked almost normal. Almost. "Lena." He pointed to the chair opposite him. "Thank you for coming." She sat down gingerly, her leg aching with the effort. "Did I really have a choice?" "You always have a choice." He relaxed back into his own chair with the smooth confidence of someone who is totally at ease with himself. "You could have refused, stayed at home, ignored my offer, and if you had, I would have respected that decision." His eyes locked with hers, and she was again amazed by how controlled they were. "I am a lot of things, Lena, but I am not a liar. When I say I will do something, I do it." A waiter came to the table, silent and skilled, and poured wine into glasses she had not noticed were empty. He was gone before she could say no. "I do not drink," she said. "Then do not." Victor lifted his own glass, but did not take a sip. "But you looked like you needed something to do with your hands." He was correct. She was gripping the table so hard that her knuckles were pale. "You have questions," Victor stated. It was a statement, not a question. "Ask them. Why are you doing all this? The debt, the surgery, everything. What is it you really want from me? I told you, dinner once a week. No one pays hundreds of thousands of dollars just for conversation." "I do." He put his glass down, leaning forward just a little. "Do you have any idea what my life is like, Lena? Every single day, I am surrounded by people who want something from me. Money, safety, power. They lie straight to my face and believe I am not aware of it. They smile at me while they plot to betray me. They say what they think I want to hear, not the truth." He stopped for a moment. "And then I met you. What about me? You jumped between me and a girl you hardly knew. No thinking, no hidden motive, no thought about what you might gain. You just did it because it was the right thing to do." His voice softened. "Do you know how incredibly rare that is in my world? That was not bravery," Lena said in a low voice. That was desperation. Perhaps, but it was authentic. Victor's look was so intense she wanted to turn away. And I have not seen anything authentic in a very long time. The waiter came back with appetizers, small, beautifully arranged foods Lena did not recognize. They looked like paintings on the plates. So what is this? She asked, looking at the food. I am supposed to be your weekly dose of reality, your reminder that real people still exist. Something like that. Victor picked up a fork, but did not eat. I spend my days making choices that impact thousands of people, decisions that require me to be 10 steps ahead, to consider every possibility, and to trust no one. It is draining. And then I meet a person who does not think that way, who acts from the heart without weighing the odds. He paused. I find that interesting. I find you frightening. Good. His smile was as sharp as a knife. You should be frightened. I am a frightening man. But I am also being truthful with you, which is more than most people in your life can likely say. You do not know a thing about my life. I know more than you realize. Victor finally took a bite of his food. I know you have worked at Sal's for 3 years. I know you send your aunt in Pennsylvania money every month, even when you can barely make ends meet. I know you take extra shifts whenever Emma needs time off for her brother's medical appointments. I know you have been in constant pain for 4 years, and you have never complained once. Lena felt a chill run through her. You have been watching me. I have been learning about you. There is a difference. That is not any better. Maybe not, but it is the truth. He put his fork down. I do not make investments without research, Lena. And make no mistake about it. This is an investment. In what? In someone who might actually give me an honest answer when I ask a question. They were silent for a moment as they ate. The food was likely delicious. It certainly cost enough, but Lena could hardly taste it. She was too focused on trying to figure out the man sitting across from her. Victor Kane, who ruined lives with a single phone call and paid for a stranger's surgery, who ran an empire based on fear, yet seemed to want a simple conversation with a waitress. It did not add up. It is my turn to ask a question, Lena finally said. How did you become this way? Running an empire, controlling this city. People do not just wake up and decide to be crime lords. Victor was silent for a long time, his face impossible to read. My father worked in a factory for 30 years, 60 hours a week, making parts for cars he could never afford. When I was 15, the owners moved production overseas. Cheaper workers, bigger profits. My father received 2 weeks of pay and a handshake. He swirled the wine in his glass, but did not drink it. He died 6 months later. A heart attack, brought on by stress and high blood pressure, we could not afford to treat. I am sorry. Do not be. It taught me a very important lesson. Victor's voice was cold and empty of emotion. The world does not reward hard work or being loyal. It rewards power. So I chose to gain power. By protecting what is mine and the people who are under my protection. He looked into her eyes. You stood between me and Emma. That meant putting yourself in harm's way. Was that wrong? That is not the same thing, is it? We both make sacrifices to protect the things that matter to us. The scale of it is different. The idea is the same. Lena wanted to disagree, but his logic was uncomfortably solid. You are making excuses for violence. I am explaining reality. Victor leaned back. In your world, morality is straightforward, right and wrong, black and white. In my world, everything is gray. Every action has a consequence. Every choice demands a sacrifice. And anyone who says otherwise is either a fool or a liar. So you just live with it? The violence, the fear, everything. I do not accept it. I am in control of it. His tone grew colder. Do you have any idea what happens when men like me are not around? Chaos. Far worse, people rush in to fill the void. I, at least, have standards. People know exactly where they stand with me. Standards like threatening to kidnap a 19-year-old girl. For a moment, Victor looked genuinely ashamed. That was a negotiation tactic. I would not have actually taken her. How was I to know that? You were not supposed to. That was the entire point. He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture that made him seem surprisingly human. I needed S to understand that actions have consequences. But you are correct. It was cruel and uncalled for, which is why I settled the debt. Because I collapsed right in front of you. Because you showed me something I had forgotten about. Victor's gaze was sharp. It was courage without a hidden agenda. Sacrifice with no thought of a reward. It was a reminder that not everyone in this city plays the same game I do. The main course was served. It was something covered in a fancy sauce that probably had a French name. The waiter topped off water glasses that were already full and then disappeared. Tell me about the accident, Victor said. Lena stiffened. Why? Because I need to understand. Because your leg is a part of you, and I am trying to get to know you. She knew she should not tell him. She should not give him anything personal, but there was something in the way he asked, so direct and truly curious, that made the words spill out. I was 20, working 2 jobs, saving up for nursing school. It was 3 in the morning. I was driving home from my shift at a warehouse when a drunk driver blew through a red light at Madison and 7th. She could still picture it sometimes, whenever she closed her eyes. I have no memory of the impact. I just remember waking up in the hospital 3 days later. My mother was crying, and a doctor was explaining how they managed to save my leg, but I would likely never walk right again. And nursing school, the medical bills ate up everything. My savings, my mother's savings, and money we borrowed from relatives that we can never repay. Lena just stared down at her plate. The driver did not have any insurance. We took him to court, but he had nothing. So I learned to walk with this limp and found a job at a local diner. And that is what my life has been for 4 years. That is not right. No, it is not. She finally looked up at him. But you were already aware of that, were you not? That life is not fair. Yes, Victor said softly. I was. They ate the rest of the meal in a silence that felt less tense than before. The waiter brought out a rich chocolate dessert and coffee that Lena drank because she needed the energy for her overnight shift, which started in 3 hours. The operation is scheduled for 2 weeks from today, Victor stated as they were finishing. Dr. Chen will contact you with all the details. Recovery will be 6 to 8 weeks before you can begin physical therapy. I cannot afford to miss that much work. You will not have to. I have already arranged for your shifts to be covered and for your regular wages to be paid. Lena put her coffee cup down very slowly. Why would you do that? Because you will not be able to heal if you are working yourself to exhaustion. He said it as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. The surgery is useless if you cannot recover the right way. You are paying for my surgery, my rent, and my salary. The sheer scale of it all was starting to hit her. That is a huge amount of money. Yes. It is more than I ought to spend on a person I hardly know. Probably. Victor's face was impossible to read. But I possess more wealth than I could use in 10 lifetimes, and you have something that I cannot purchase. So, let us call it an even exchange. What could I possibly have that you cannot buy? Authenticity. He spoke the word as if he were admitting a secret. The capacity to care for others without wondering what you will gain. The nerve to do the right thing, even when it costs you dearly. He took a breath. I want that in my life once a week, even if it is only for a little while. They got up to leave. By the door, Victor stopped and took something from his pocket. It was a business card with just a phone number on it. This is my private line, he said, giving it to her. If you ever need anything, anything at all, you call me. Day or night, it makes no difference. I do not need anything from you. Perhaps not right now, but if that situation changes. He let the thought hang in the air. The same car took her home through streets that now seemed different, as if she were viewing them from outside her own reality. When the car stopped in front of her apartment, The driver opened her door with the same quiet skill as before. "Miss Hayes," he said as she was stepping out. "For what it is worth, Mr. Kane never does this. Any of this. You must be someone very special." Lena did not feel special. She felt confused and overwhelmed, like she had been dropped into a story where she did not know her part. But later that night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she kept replaying what Victor had said about authenticity and courage, and the way he looked at her as if she were something precious and unique, instead of just broken and plain. It was a dangerous line of thinking, but it was also completely thrilling. The following 2 weeks flew by in a flurry of activity. Dr. Chen's office called with instructions for before the surgery. Victor's team handled every detail. They arranged her time off from work, her replacement pay, and her rides to and from the hospital. Emma began to cry when Lena told her, squeezing her in a hug that was almost painful. "This is happening because of what you did," Emma said. "You saved me." "No," Lena answered. "This is happening because a very odd man chose to help me for reasons I cannot begin to fathom." But that was not the whole truth either. She understood more than she was willing to admit. The Friday before her operation, she had another dinner with Victor. It was the same restaurant, the same private room, and the same cautious conversation between two people from separate worlds looking for a connection. "Are you scared?" he asked over the wine she did not touch. "Terrified," Lena confessed. "What if this does not work? What if I endure all this pain only to end up right back where I was?" "Then you will endure it again and again until it does work." Victor's confidence was unshakable. "Dr. Chen is the very best. If she can fix you, anyone can. And if she is unable to, we will find someone who is." He spoke as if money could fix any issue. In his world, maybe it could. "Why is this so important to you?" Lena asked. "My leg, my suffering, everything. You barely know who I am." Victor was silent for a long moment. "Because when you fell at my feet and said you could not run, I saw something in your eyes. Not fear, not begging, just the truth. And it has haunted me ever since. That is a strange reason to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. I am a strange man." His smile was a bit self-mocking. "But I honor my commitments, and I made a commitment to myself that if you accepted this, the dinners, letting me into your world just a little, I would guarantee you a chance to walk again. To truly walk, free of pain." The procedure took place on a Tuesday morning in a hospital that was so luxurious, it felt more like a hotel. She had a private room. The nurses actually had time to check in on her. Her window offered a view of the city from 18 floors up. Dr. Chen stopped by the night before, explaining every step of what would happen and answering every question until Lena had none left. "You are going to do wonderfully," Dr. Chen said, giving her hand a squeeze. "I have done this exact procedure 47 times. You are in excellent hands." Lena tried hard to believe her. She awoke in the recovery room, her legs swathed in bandages, with pain medicine making the world feel soft and blurry. A nurse monitored her vitals while a person who might have been a doctor asked her questions that she answered without really processing them. And then, Victor was there. She blinked, trying to bring him into focus, convinced the medication was causing her to see things. But no, he was really sitting in the chair next to her bed, still dressed in his expensive suit, looking entirely out of place in the sterile room. "You came," she managed to say through the haze. "I said I would." "No, you did not. I implied it." A tiny smile touched his lips. "How do you feel?" "Like someone dismantled my leg and then put it back together incorrectly." "That is pretty close to what happened, but Dr. Chen said it was a complete success. Better than she had hoped, in fact." Lena attempted to sit up, a move she instantly regretted. Victor shot up from his chair, adjusting her pillows with a surprising gentleness. "Take it easy. You just had the operation. Why are you even here? Because you are by yourself. and everyone deserves to have somebody waiting for them when they come to. He settled back in his chair, and for the first time, Lena realized how exhausted he appeared. I had to see for myself that you were okay. You have an entire empire to manage. The empire will be fine for a couple of hours without me. She tried to protest, but the pain medicine was lulling her back to sleep. Her eyelids grew heavy no matter how hard she fought to stay awake. Rest, Victor said softly. I will be right here when you open your eyes. And he was. Each time she floated back to consciousness over the next 12 hours, he was there, either scrolling on his phone or making quiet calls in the corner. Once, she heard him arguing in hushed tones with someone, probably James, about a matter needing his immediate focus, but he never left. On the second day, when her mind was clear and the pain had lessened from unbearable to merely intense, Lena finally voiced the question that had been forming. What is it you really want from me, Victor? He raised his head from his phone and met her gaze. What do you mean by this? Her gesture took in the room, him, and the whole situation. People do not do this for a dinner partner. So, what is your real motive? Victor remained silent for a long moment, his face more unguarded than she had ever seen. I want to remember how it feels to be human, he admitted at last. I want to have a conversation with someone unafraid to tell me the truth. Someone who does not want my fortune, my influence, or my contacts. Someone who speaks to me like a person and not a monster. He stopped. Is that so difficult to accept? Yes, Lena replied honestly. Because you are a monster. Hurting people is your job. I know. He did not flinch. But perhaps for one night a week, for a couple of hours I can pretend that I am not, with you. The words should have sounded manipulative, like some kind of trap. But instead, it was the most genuine thing she had ever heard him say. Her recovery was agonizing. The physical therapy sessions were even worse. For 6 weeks, she endured workouts that set her legs on fire. Progress came in tiny increments. Some days she just wanted to give up, certain she would never walk right again. Victor came by 2 times a week, once for their planned dinner, and a second time just to see how she was doing. He never lingered on the second visit, only staying long enough to ask about her day, listen to her complain about the therapy, and assure her it would all pay off. How can you be so sure? She asked. It was after a terrible day when the pain was so bad, she had wept through the entire session. Because I have watched people come back from far worse, Victor answered quietly. Because you have more strength than you realize. Because it is not in your character to quit. You do not know me well enough to say that. I know that you faced me down with a broken leg and no way to protect yourself. That is everything I need to know about your character. 12 weeks after her operation, Lena took her first unassisted steps. They were clumsy and far from painless, but they were all hers. Dr. Chen wept. The physical therapist applauded. Lena just stood in the therapy room, bearing weight on her injured leg, and experienced a feeling she had not known in 4 years. Hope. That Friday, she entered the restaurant on her own 2 feet. She still had a slight limp and favored her good leg, but she was walking. No cane, no crutches, just her. Victor got to his feet when she arrived, and she caught a look on his face that was almost like pride. You are walking, he stated. I am walking. She took her seat opposite him, a smile spreading across her face. It is still sore, and I am not completely healed, but I am moving on my own. I told you it would all pay off. They enjoyed their meal and talked, and for the first time since their unusual arrangement started, Lena felt like she was dining with a friend, not cutting a deal with a demon. That peace was short-lived. While Lena was regaining her ability to walk, Victor's world was beginning to crumble, and she was about to be the cause of its total collapse. It began with quiet murmurs. About 3 weeks after she began walking on her own, Lena started to notice it. There were small changes in the way people reacted when she walked into a room. Conversations would die down the moment she came near. Their eyes trailed her, filled with a mix of curiosity and an unnerving hint of fear. At the diner, Regular customers she had known for ages now avoided her gaze. New patrons would stare at her before quickly looking away if she met their eyes. Even Marcus, who had been her co-worker on the graveyard shift for 3 years, acted differently. He was more guarded, as if she were suddenly someone to be wary of. "What is happening?" she finally demanded one quiet Tuesday, trapping him near the coffee machine. Marcus looked out at the dining area and then back at her. "You honestly have no idea." "Idea about what?" He let out a long breath, wiping a hand across his tired face. "There are rumors, Lena, about you and Victor Kane." A chill went down her spine. "What kind of rumors?" "That you belong to him, that he is taking care of you, that the operation, the meals, everything?" Marcus could not bring himself to finish. "That is not what this is," Lena said firmly. "We just eat together once a week. I know you, but others will believe what they want, and they see a waitress who got the attention of the city's most feared man." Marcus lowered his voice. "Some people say you are lucky, others call you a fool, and a few," he paused. "A few what?" "A few think you are a problem. Whether for him or for you, I cannot say." Lena returned to her shift with a cold dread settling in her stomach. She had been so consumed by her recovery, by the joy of walking again, that she never thought about the outside perception. A waitress with no money gets top-tier medical treatment from a known crime lord. They have weekly meals at fancy places. It was the kind of special attention that screamed there was a hidden story, whether it was true or not. The feeling of being watched clung to her all the way home. She sensed eyes on her at the bus stop, but she never saw who it was. Her phone vibrated with a text message from an unknown number. Just 3 words that made her feel icy cold. "You are being watched." She deleted the text right away, but kept glancing over her shoulder on her way home. Friday's dinner with Victor began as usual. Same place, same private table, same cautious conversation. But Lena was unable to concentrate. Her mind was stuck on the rumors, the stares, and that text message. "You seem preoccupied," Victor noted, placing his wine glass on the table. "What is bothering you?" "People are gossiping about us. People always gossip. They believe I am—" The words were caught in her throat. "People think we are involved," Victor stated, his tone as casual as if talking about rain. "I am aware. The gossip has reached me." "And it does not bother you?" "Why should it? I know what is true, and so do you. Anyone else's opinion is meaningless." "It is not meaningless to me," Lena snapped, her voice harsher than she meant. "I exist in a world where my reputation is important, Victor. Who I am seen with has consequences." "Then do not be seen with me." His face was a mask, but his eyes showed a brief flash of something else. "You can leave at any moment. I made that clear from day one." "I do not want to leave. I wish—" She searched for the right words. "I wish things were not this difficult." "Anything of value is difficult." Victor settled back into his chair. "Still, if the talk is troubling you, I can silence it." "How would you do that?" "By sending a clear message. You are under my care. Anyone who harms you, threatens you, or even speaks ill of you will have to deal with me directly." A steely resolve underscored his quiet voice. "It is a straightforward fix." "That will only make things worse. It would prove all their rumors are true." "So what is it you want from me?" Lena had no reply. She wanted the life-changing surgery, their weekly meals, and the unexpected bond they had formed. She just wanted it all without the price, the peril, and being a mark because of him. She was asking for the impossible. "I received another message today," she said softly, "from a number I do not know. It just said, 'You are being watched.'" In an instant, Victor's entire posture shifted. His relaxed posture evaporated, replaced by a chilling intensity. "Let me see it." I erased it. "What time?" "Around 3 o'clock this afternoon." He took out his phone, his thumbs flying across the screen before his gaze returned to her. His expression was new, a mix of worry and something that resembled genuine fear. I have tasked James with investigating, but I need the truth from you, Lena. Has anyone been tailing you? Have you seen the same car too many times? Or unfamiliar faces in familiar places? I am not sure. Perhaps. I told myself I was just being jumpy. That is not being jumpy. That is being aware. Victor's jaw clenched. This is precisely the scenario I dreaded. What are you talking about? I have dangerous rivals, influential people who are desperate to find a vulnerability they can use against me. His eyes locked on hers. You have become that vulnerability. His words settled between them, heavy as a final judgment. I never wanted any of this, Lena whispered. I am aware. That is why I am handling it. Victor shot to his feet. James is taking you home. A security team starts tomorrow. 2 men working in shifts. They will be discreet, but always there. You likely will not notice them, but they will be watching. I do not need protection. And I do not need you gone. His tone was absolute. This is not up for debate, Lena. You either take the security or we stop all of this right now. It is up to you. She wanted to fight back, to insist she was capable of looking after herself. But the chilling phrase, "You are being watched," echoed in her mind. All right, she conceded, but only until you find out who sent that message. Until I am sure you are out of danger. That could take some time. The drive back to her apartment was unnerving. James was behind the wheel, not the regular chauffeur, his gaze constantly darting to the mirrors as if searching for someone following them. He escorted her all the way to her front door when they arrived, another break from the norm. Mr. Kane is not taking this lightly, James advised in a low voice. Neither should you. Stick to your schedule. Visit only your usual places. If something feels even slightly off, call this number right away. He gave her a small card, not with Victor's personal number, but another one. It is a 24-hour emergency line. An operator will pick up before the 3rd ring. You are making me nervous. Good. Nerves keep you sharp, and being sharp keeps you breathing. Lena hardly slept. Each noise from the corridor made her flinch. The sound of every passing car seemed menacing. She repeatedly checked her phone, anticipating another text, but the screen remained dark. The protective detail showed up the next day. 2 men in plain clothes sat in a generic car parked down the street. She saw them only because she knew to look for them. They blended in perfectly. At her usual diner, Marcus saw them right away. Looks like you picked up a tail, he commented while pouring coffee. I am aware. Not sure if that is a good thing or a bad thing. Neither am I. The first week with the detail went by quietly. The men were professional, staying out of sight. Lena could almost pretend they were not there, but not quite. Friday arrived, and so did her dinner with Victor. He looked terrible, completely worn out and stressed, with dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. They both ordered but ate nothing, sitting in, an awkward quiet before Lena could not stand it anymore. Victor, what is going on? What is the real story? He paused for a considerable time before speaking. There is unrest among certain groups. They are second-guessing my choices, my way of doing things. What happened with Sal made it worse. Because you showed him mercy. Because I showed them I was weak, he corrected. In my line of work, mercy is weakness, kindness is a liability, and liabilities get people eliminated. And what does this mean for me and you? It means some of my own people believe I am losing my resolve, and they point to you as the proof. Victor's face was stern. And my competitors see you as a tool, a path to hurt me. Then we should probably end this. The dinners, everything. If I am a risk to you, you are not the one putting me at risk. I am. He leaned in closer. I chose to assist you. I chose to continue these meetings, to allow you into my world, even on the edges. That was my call and my gamble. I refuse to back out now just because things got messy. But why? The smart move would be to stop. Because for the first time in 10 years, I have something to anticipate that is not work-related. These meals, speaking with you, hearing you, being near someone who expects nothing from me but talk. It is the only time I do not feel like just a tool for violence. He stopped for a beat. So no, I am not leaving, unless that is what you want. Lena knew she should agree. She should stop it all right then and protect them both from the inevitable fallout. But she could not. The danger, the rumors, all of it faded against how much she had come to cherish these evenings. She loved how Victor heard her, as if her thoughts were significant. He never once talked down to her or made her feel small. He saw her as his equal, even though their lives could not have been more different. I do not want this to end either, she confessed softly. A change came over Victor's face, a slight softening. Then we will proceed, but with caution. And you must follow every safety rule James puts in place. No excuses. I will. I am serious, Lena. These men have no rules. They would harm you in a heartbeat to get to me. I understand. But she did not. Not truly. Not until 3 days later, when her world collapsed. It happened on a Tuesday evening. Lena was due to finish her diner shift at 11 o'clock, but with Emma sick, they were a person short, so she stayed to close up. It was nearly 1 in the morning when she finally stepped out the back door into the employee alley. The security team was assigned to the front entrance. She had told them she would leave from the back, but she had forgotten to tell them about her late shift. The alley was pitch black. The rear light had been out for a week, and management had not gotten around to fixing it. Lena's car was at the far end, and she was about halfway there when she heard footsteps approaching from behind. She spun around. 3 men blocked the path to the door. They were not her security guards. They were strangers with harsh faces and cold eyes, and they moved with the practiced ease of men who had done this before. Lena Hayes, the one in the lead, stated, not asking. She tried to run, but her leg, not yet completely healed and still weak from a long recovery, failed her after just 3 steps. She stumbled and steadied herself on a dumpster, trying to push forward, but they were quicker. A hand seized her arm. She cried out, twisting, and felt a new tear in her mending leg. A white-hot, blinding pain shot through her. She fell hard, the rough concrete scraping her hands raw. "Do not make this harder than it needs to be," the man said, yanking her up by her hair. "We just have some questions for you about your new friend." "He is not my boyfriend." "Right, he is not." The man's breath was a foul mix of cigarettes and old beer. "Victor Kane is spending a fortune on a crippled waitress just because he is a nice guy. You expect us to buy that?" "I do not care what you believe." He struck her. It was not a knockout blow, but it was enough to make her vision swim and her ears hum. The metallic taste of blood filled her mouth. "So here is the plan," he said, his tone casual. "You are going to call Kane. You will tell him you have to see him right now and he needs to come alone. And when he gets here, we are going to talk about business and respect and what happens when you forget your place." "I will not do it." He hit her again. This time she felt a tooth chip. "You will, because if you do not, we will hurt you until you change your mind. And believe me, we have plenty of time." Lena's phone was in her pocket. The emergency number James gave her was burned into her brain, but her arms were pinned behind her, and every struggle sent waves of agony through her leg. "All right," she choked out. "All right, I will call him." "Good girl." He let go of her hair and she sagged against the trash container. "Make it sound real. Tell him you are hurt, that you need him, that you are afraid. He shows up alone or you are dead." It was that simple. Another man gave her the phone. Her hand was trembling so much she nearly fumbled it. She found Victor's name in her contacts, her thoughts racing. There had to be an escape. Something she could say or do to alert him without signing her own death warrant. The phone rang 1 time, then 2. Victor picked up on the 3rd ring, his voice instantly sharp with worry. Lena, it is 1 in the morning. What is wrong? I need you, she said, pouring all of her real fear and pain into her words. I am hurt. I am still at the diner. Please, come get me. I am on my way. Are you in a safe place? The man stood over her, a gun now clearly in his hand. No, Lena whispered. And Victor, they said you have to come by yourself. She ended the call before he could say more. The man grinned. Well done. Now, we wait. They pulled her further into the alley, secured her wrist to a pipe with a zip tie, and melted into the shadows. They were waiting, they were hunting. Lena's leg ached with every beat of her heart. Her mouth was full of blood. The plastic tie was already digging into her wrists, making them numb, and she had just lured the kindest person she had known in years into a deadly trap. 20 minutes felt like 20 years. Lena struggled with the tie, but it was industrial grade, and she only managed to cut her skin raw. She thought about screaming, but one of the men put his gun to her head and advised her to stay quiet if she wanted to be alive when Victor showed up. So she was quiet, and she waited. The sound of a car entering the alley made the three men go still. Car doors opened. Footsteps drew closer, steady and calm. Victor walked into the dim light, and Lena's heart shattered. He had come alone, exactly as they wanted. No guards, no backup, just him, in a fine suit, looking perfectly composed as he walked right into their ambush. Let her go, he said, his voice low. The leader laughed. That is not how this goes, Kane. You are not in charge here. I was not asking. Victor's tone turned cold and dangerous. Let her go now, and I might spare your lives. Big words for a man who is outnumbered. You think 3 of you is enough? Victor's smile was chilling. You have no idea what you are up against. It was then that Lena saw them, figures moving in the darkness behind Victor. 4, 5, then 6 men stepping out of the shadows like apparitions, all carrying weapons, all moving with lethal grace. It was the security team she thought was out front. James stepped into view, his weapon already aimed. More men she had never seen before seemed to appear from nowhere. The 3 kidnappers understood their mistake far too late. Drop your weapons, James ordered calmly. You have 3 seconds. They did not comply. What happened next was swift and savage and not at all like the movies. The sound of gunshots echoed in the narrow space. Bodies fell. Someone screamed. It might have been her. It might have been one of them. Blood splattered on the pavement. The man who struck her collapsed with a hole in his chest, his eyes wide with shock. And then, it was done. A heavy silence fell, broken only by Lena's ragged breaths and the faint wail of sirens that would arrive long after they were needed. Victor was by her side in an instant, slicing the zip tie with a knife that seemed to materialize in his hand. Are you hurt? Did they hurt you? My leg, she managed to say. I think it tore again when I fell. He lifted her as if she weighed nothing, holding her close to his chest. James, handle this. I am taking her to Dr. Chen. The authorities will discover 3 dead thugs who chose the wrong person to cross. Victor's voice was like ice. Make it look like a rival gang. You know what to do. He carried her to his car, not the familiar sedan, but a low, fast vehicle, and navigated the city with a controlled speed that felt more reckless than breaking the law. Lena buried her face in his shoulder, trembling, trying to erase the images of the bodies, the blood, and the fact that men had just died over her. I am sorry, she whispered. I am so very sorry. I should have used the emergency number. I should have. You are alive. That is the only thing that matters. His jaw was set. This is my doing. I misjudged how far they would push. Who were they? Business rivals. People who see me as weak and wanted to use you to prove their point. His grip on the steering wheel tightened. They were mistaken. Dr. Chen was waiting for them at her private clinic. She had been woken up, but looked perfectly composed. She checked Lena's leg with a gentle skill while Victor paced nearby like a trapped tiger. Torn ligaments, Dr. Chen said at last. It could have been worse, but you will need to keep off it for at least 2 weeks. Your physical therapy will have to begin again. She looked directly at Lena. You are extremely fortunate. A little more pressure, and you might have erased months of progress. Thank you, Lena whispered. Dr. Chen cleaned and bandaged her wrists, gave her a shot for the pain, and told her to rest, something they both knew was a luxury she could not afford. Victor was driving her home just as the sun began to rise. He parked in front of her apartment, but did not let her leave right away. This cannot happen again, he said softly. They targeted you once. They will try again. So what does that mean? It means you need to go away for a while. I have a secure house outside the city. It is safe, and it is protected. You can stay there comfortably until I have dealt with this threat. I cannot just vanish. I have a job. I have a life here. You nearly lost your life tonight. His voice held a slight tremor. They would have killed you, Lena, slowly and horribly just to wound me, and I would have been powerless to stop them. Then maybe we should just stop this. The dinners, this whole arrangement. If knowing you puts me in this kind of danger, it is too late for that. Victor finally turned to face her, and the look in his eyes stole her breath. You are tied to me now. Everyone knows. Ending our agreement will not make you any less of a target. It will only make you an easier one. So, I am a prisoner. You are protected. There is a distinction. He took out his phone, brought something up, and turned the screen to her. This is the safe house, 20 minutes from the city, fully staffed and completely secure. You will have everything you need, and you will be safe. Lena stared at the image of the house. It was beautiful, remote, and expensive. It was a cage built from luxury and good intentions. And what if I refuse? Then I will assign a full-time security detail to you. 6 men working in shifts, 24/7. They will go with you everywhere. To work, to your home, to the supermarket. You will have no privacy, but you will be protected. Both choices felt like a kind of defeat, like losing her freedom was a risk she was willing to take. The secure location, she finally offered, but only until the situation is resolved. Only until it is resolved, Victor echoed. He kept the rest to himself, that it might not ever be truly resolved. In his world, you did not just walk away. Threats did not simply vanish on command. But Lena was beginning to figure that out for herself. 3 days later, with 2 bags and a heavy sense of fear, she relocated. The house was exactly as Victor described, lovely, well-appointed, and fortified. A silent staff moved about unseen. The property was vast. The protection was invisible but constant. It was designed to be a sanctuary, but it felt more like a cage. Victor came by every couple of days. He gave her updates on the case, the level of danger, and the steps being taken to secure her future. They ate in the formal dining room, not in public. They conversed as they always did, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy that was not there. And Lena began to accept that her life might never be normal. 2 weeks in that house felt like 2 years. Her days were spent gazing out at the property she could not walk without an escort, trying to read books but failing to concentrate, and staring at her phone, hoping for a way out that she knew did not exist. Her leg was mending, a slow and painful process. But the mental scars from the assault were far deeper than any physical injury. She was haunted by the faces of her attackers, the bite of the restraints on her skin, and the metallic taste of her own blood. She constantly relived the instant Victor had. He went into that alley by himself, prepared to die for her. He came to visit on the 15th day, showing up after sundown with food from a Thai place she once said she liked. They ate in the dining room as a storm raged outside, with rain pounding the glass and thunder echoing. Victor put his fork down and said, "I have some news. We found the person who ordered the hit." Lena felt her stomach tighten. Who was it? A man named Marcus Vulov. He controls the East Side territory. For months, he has been pushing his limits, seeing if I would react. Victor's face was a perfect mask of neutrality. He took you to prove that I had become weak, that I was more concerned with a waitress than keeping my power. What are you going to do about it? I am going to do what is necessary, what I should have taken care of months ago. He looked directly at her. I am going to take him out of the picture for good. That last word hung in the air like a final judgment. Lena understood exactly what he meant. She had understood it the moment she saw his men kill her attackers in that alley. But hearing him say it with such calm, as if it were a simple fact, made it terrifyingly real. You plan to kill him. I plan to remove a threat against my operation and against you. Yes. There must be another way. You could go to the police. The law can't get to Vulov. He has too many cops in his pocket. Victor's tone was firm but patient. Even if they could, it wouldn't change anything. In my line of work, weakness is an invitation for attack. If I don't answer this with force, every low-level thug in the city will believe they can target you to get to me. So, more people will die because of me. No, more people will die because of their own terrible decisions. He reached out and placed his hand over hers on the table. This is not your fault, Lena. You never asked for any part of this. You were only trying to help a frightened girl at the diner. That single act of kindness brought you into my life. Everything that followed is my responsibility. But I chose to stay. I kept coming to dinner with you. I said yes to the surgery, the assistance, all of it. I made my own choices. You chose to survive, to heal, and to walk again. Victor's hand tightened on hers. Do not confuse your will to live with being guilty. They ate the rest of their meal in a tense silence. Lena searched for a moral argument, a reason to object, but she was done pretending she didn't know how his world operated. Every action had a reaction. Violence created more violence, and survival meant being more ruthless than your enemies. When will it happen? She finally asked. Tonight. I will be leaving in an hour. Are you going yourself? I must. Sending anyone else would be perceived as a weakness. He got up and started to clear their plates, a strangely normal act for a man whose job was killing. The situation should be resolved by morning, and then you will be able to go home. Just like that. Yes, just like that. Once Vulov is gone, his crew will fall apart. His top men will be too focused on fighting each other for power to bother with you. You will become unimportant. Old news. Victor stopped at the sink, his back to her. You will be safe to return to your normal life. The tone of his voice made Lena get up and walk over to him. What is it you are not telling me? He was silent for what felt like a very long time. There is something else. Something I discovered while looking into Vulov's operation. What is it? Victor turned around to look at her, and the look on his face was the mix of things. There was anger, but also something that resembled pity. Your brother, Daniel Hayes. He was on my payroll 5 years ago. The entire room seemed to spin. What are you talking about? He was on a team that handled collections down in the warehouse district. He was a good earner, very dependable, until he changed. Victor's voice was very deliberate and controlled. He became greedy and started skimming money. It was just small amounts at first, but then it got bigger. By the time we figured it out, he had taken almost $200,000. Lena's knees felt like they would give out. She reached for the counter to steady herself. That is impossible. Daniel was killed in a work accident 5 years ago. I was at his funeral. Daniel died while running from my men. They pursued him onto a construction site. He fell 4 stories while trying to get away. Victor's gaze was locked on hers. The official report was changed to protect your family from the truth. Your mother passed away without ever knowing what he was really involved in. You are the reason my brother is dead. The words felt empty, devoid of any feeling. The shock was like a wave of cold. My people were after him, but the fall is what killed him. It was not a planned hit, Lena. It was an accident that happened while they were in pursuit. Victor took one slow step closer to her. I had no idea who he was back then. I didn't know he had a sister. The connection was not made until I began researching your past. When did you find out? 2 weeks ago, after the attack. I was checking everyone who ever had ties to my operation, searching for any link to Vulov. 2 weeks. Lena's voice started to climb, the shock turning into a burning rage. You have known for 2 weeks that you are responsible for my brother's death, and you said nothing to me. I did not know how to tell you, and I was scared. He paused. Scared of what? I was scared that you would see me the way you are seeing me now, as the monster that everyone claims I am. Lena had the urge to scream, to break something, to make him feel the pain that was tearing her apart. Her brother, the charming and reckless Daniel, who said he would help with their mom's hospital bills and then died too soon, was a thief. He had stolen from Victor Kane and died escaping the fallout, and she never knew. Did he suffer? The question sounded broken. No, his death was immediate. I made sure of it. Victor's calm exterior was beginning to break. I realize that doesn't make it better. I realize nothing I say can fix what happened. But I need you to know. I did not know about you at the time. If I had, if I had known he had a sister working herself to exhaustion just to get by, I might have approached it differently. I might have. I am not sure. Maybe, or maybe not. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. I cannot undo what is done, Lena. I can only offer you the truth now, and pray that you do not hate me for it. I should hate you. Lena's voice was trembling. I should leave this place right now and never turn back. You should, and you have every right to. I will have James drive you wherever you need to go. I will ensure you are kept safe until Vulov is handled, and then you will not have to see me again. Is that what you want? No. The single word was raw and full of honesty. But it is what you deserve. A life that is not made a mess by me, by my life, and by the violence that is always with me. Lena shut her eyes, struggling to make sense of it all. Her brother was a criminal. Victor's men had chased him to his death. And the man who had rescued her, who had made it possible for her to walk again, and who had almost become a friend during months of Friday night dinners, was indirectly the cause of the greatest loss in her life. It should have been an easy decision. It should have been a clean cut. But nothing about their situation had ever been easy. I need some time, she said at last. I have to think about this. Take all the time you need. Victor started for the door but then stopped. If it means anything to you, I am truly sorry. Not for dealing with the consequences. Your brother made his choices and he paid the price. But I am sorry for the hurt it brought you. For your mother passing away without knowing the real story. For all the years you had to struggle by yourself because he was not there for you. I am sorry for all of that. He was gone before she could say anything back. Lena stood alone in the safe house kitchen, surrounded by a luxury she never wanted, and she wept for the first time since the assault. She cried for Daniel and his foolish decisions, and for her mother, who died thinking her son was a good man. She cried for the person she used to be before the injury, before the hospital bills, before Victor Kane entered her world and flipped it completely upside down, and for the future that she felt was disappearing with each new truth. She stayed awake all night, sitting by the window, watching lightning flash across the sky, and thinking about how many people would be dead by sunrise. Victor, Vulov, men whose names she would never learn, but whose deaths would still be on her conscience, because this fight began when she stepped in front of Emma. The morning was gray and chilly. Lena was still in the window when she got a text message from James. It is finished. Mr. Kane is unharmed. Vulov is no longer an issue. There were no specifics, no word on how many had been killed. Just a clean, professional message confirming Victor had done exactly what he promised. He had removed the threat. Lena was supposed to feel relieved, to feel secure, but all she felt was an empty void. Victor did not come the next day, or the day after that. James came by instead, bringing her food, giving her updates, and carefully asking if she required anything. She understood that Victor was giving her room, letting her process everything and make a choice. On the third day, Emma appeared at the front door. Lena was so shocked to see her that she could only stand there for a moment, staring as the young woman waited nervously on the porch. Emma, how did you find me? Mr. Kane arranged for a car to bring me here. He said you might like to see a familiar face. Emma's eyes widened as she looked at the mansion behind Lena. So this is where you have been staying. It is just for a little while. Lena moved to let her inside. How are you doing? How are things at the diner? It is strange without you there. Marcus is always asking when you are coming back to work. Emma walked with her to the living room, sitting on the very edge of a fancy couch as if she were scared to get it dirty. Are you doing okay? I heard stories about what happened. People were saying you got hurt, that Mr. Kane, that some people died. It is very complicated. Everything about this whole situation is complicated. Emma spoke in a soft voice. But I really wanted to thank you for what you did for me that night at the diner, and well, for everything that is going on now. I know this is happening because of me, because you stood up for me. This is not your fault at all, Emma. Maybe not, but I cannot help but feel like I am to blame. The girl wrung her hands. Mr. Kane visited me last week. Did he tell you? Lena's stomach sank. What? Why would he do that? He wanted to make sure I was okay and to offer protection if I ever needed it, and that he thought you were the most courageous person he had ever known. Emma looked directly at her. He claimed you changed him, helped him remember how to care for someone besides himself. He said that? He also said he could never forgive himself if you got hurt because of him. He was trying to solve the problem, but he was not sure you could ever trust him again. Emma leaned in closer. What went on, Lena? What did he do? Lena then told her everything. The dinners, the surgery, the assault, and her brother. She explained the horrible coincidence that linked her to Victor long before she even knew his name. She spoke of the choice she now had to make, to walk away for her safety or to stay and embrace the constant danger of loving a man like him. Loving. Emma noticed the word Lena had not intended to say. You love him? I am not sure. Maybe. Lena buried her face in her hands. How can I love a man who is the source of so much pain? A man who takes lives as easily as I pour coffee? A man who created an empire built on violence and fear? But he also rescued you, gave you your life back, and defended you when he had no reason to, Emma said gently. No one is just one thing, Lena. People are complex and inconsistent, a total mess of contradictions. Mr. Kane might be a monster, but he could also be a man who is trying to change for you. That is a heavy burden. Love often is. Emma stayed for 3 hours. By the time she departed, Lena felt a little less isolated and a bit more prepared to make the impossible choice ahead of her. That night, Victor returned. He looked utterly drained. There were dark circles under his eyes and a deep tension in his shoulders, the kind of weariness that comes from violence and its aftermath. But his eyes brightened when he saw her, just for a second before his careful expression returned. How are you? He asked. I am not sure yet. Lena pointed toward the sitting room. We need to talk. They sat facing each other, with the coffee table between them feeling like a great divide. The rain had started again. A gentle sound this time, tapping on the windows in time with Lena's own heart. I have been thinking about what you said, she began, about Daniel. And I hate what happened. I hate the choices he made. I hate that he died afraid and by himself. She took a deep breath. But I do not hate you for it. A flicker of surprise crossed Victor's face. Perhaps you should. Maybe, but for the last 3 days, I have been thinking about who Daniel really was. And the honest truth is, I did not know him as well as I believed. He was my older brother, and I loved him, but he made his own choices, terrible ones, and he paid the price for them. Lena looked directly at Victor. You did not kill him. Your men were doing their jobs. He ran. He fell. It was a tragedy, but it was not murder. That is a generous way to see it. It is an honest way, which is what you have always asked from me. She leaned forward. But I have to know something, and I need you to be totally honest with me. No tricks, no manipulation, just the truth. Anything. Did you know about Daniel when you first came to help me? When you paid off Sal's debt and arranged the surgery? Was any of that about feeling guilty for what happened to my brother? Victor met her gaze without flinching. No, I did not know until 2 weeks ago. Everything I did for you, the debt, the operation, the dinners, I did it all because I wanted to, because you impressed me, because for the first time in a very long time, I met a person who acted out of courage and not selfish calculation. He paused. Finding out about Daniel did not change anything, except to make me see how connected our lives already were. Whether it is fate or a coincidence, I do not know. But it was not guilt. Okay. Lena believed him. She was not sure why, but she did. Second question. What is next? Vulov is gone. The danger has been dealt with. So what happens now? That is up to you. Victor's voice was cautious. You can go back to your old life. I will see to it that you are protected from afar. We can stop the Friday dinners and this whole arrangement. You will be safe, and you will be free. Or, or you can stay in my life completely, not as a duty or a weekly dinner partner, but as someone who is important to me, someone I want to protect, not because I have to, but because I cannot imagine my life without doing it. He stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the rain. I understand what that means. The risk, the problems, the reality that being with me will always put a target on your back. I know it is not fair of me to ask, but I am asking you anyway. Lena's heart was racing. Why? Victor turned to face her, and for the first time she had ever known him, his guarded expression was gone. What was left was raw and truthful and almost hard to look at. Because somewhere between the diner and the operations and the Friday dinners, I fell in love with you, and I have absolutely no idea what to do about it. The words stayed in the air between them like a confession. Lena slowly stood up, her healing leg ached but held her steady. She walked to where Victor stood, getting close enough to see the vulnerability in his eyes, and the fear that she might turn him away. I am not sure if I love you, she said, her voice a whisper. I feel like I could, but the thought of what that means terrifies me. What my life would turn into if I pick you. Then do not pick me. Pick yourself. Choose a safe, simple life that is normal. I do not think normal was ever really in the cards for me. Lena reached out and touched his face, feeling the tight knot in his jaw. Everything changed the moment I fell at your feet. I can never go back to the person I was. She is gone for good. So, who are you now? I am still trying to figure that out. She lowered her hand. But I know I am not ready to leave. Not now. And maybe not ever. Victor wrapped his arms around her, holding her as if she were made of delicate glass. Lena allowed herself to melt into his embrace, to feel secure for the first time since it all happened. She let her mind wander to what it would be like to choose this complicated, dangerous man and build something beautiful from the ruins. I cannot promise you will be safe, he murmured into her hair. I cannot promise a normal life, but I swear I will always be honest, loyal, and protect you as long as I live. And love? The word felt foreign on her tongue, and more love than I ever thought I could feel again. They stood together as the light faded, the rain outside washing the city clean. They were two souls from different worlds, trying to find a way to connect. Lena knew more danger, violence, and hard choices were coming. But for the first time, she felt like she was making her own choices, not just trying to survive them. Take me home, she said at last. Not my apartment, not the safe house, but where you actually live. I need to see your real life, not just the face you present to everyone else. Victor stepped back, his eyes searching hers. Are you certain? No, but I am doing it anyway. A real, unguarded smile spread across his face, and in that moment, Lena saw the man he could have been if life had been kinder. The man he could still be, if he had a good enough reason to try. They left the safe house later that night, driving through the city as it sparkled with evening lights. Victor's home was a penthouse downtown. It was not flashy, but it was comfortable and decorated with surprisingly good taste. Books filled the shelves and art adorned the walls. A telescope was positioned by a window, aimed at stars she could not see past the city's glow. It was the home of a man who had acquired great wealth but was still deeply alone. I do not have visitors here, Victor said, watching her look around. This place is mine, away from the business. So why did you bring me? Because you asked. Because I need you to see me, the real me, not the crime lord, or the monster, or the man in expensive suits making threats. He walked over to her and took her hands. Just Victor, the person I am when no one else is around. Lena scanned the penthouse again, but this time with new eyes. The books were on philosophy and history. The art was modern, yet profound. The telescope hinted at a man who searched for light even when surrounded by darkness. I see you, she said softly. And you are not who I thought you were. Better or worse. More human. And that makes everything so much more complicated. They stayed up late into the night, talking about Daniel in the past, the uncertain future, and the impossible mess they were now in. Victor opened up about his efforts to make his business legitimate, to lessen the violence, and to escape the legacy he was so desperate not to leave behind. I have spent 10 years building an empire, he confessed. But I am starting to see that empires are just kingdoms built on top of graves. I am done with that. I want something real. Like what? Like this. Sitting here with someone who pushes me, who sees the darkest parts of me and does not run away. Someone who makes me want to be a better man. He gently touched her face. Like you. Lena drifted off to sleep on his couch, emotionally and mentally drained. When she opened her eyes, Victor was asleep in a chair opposite her, a tablet slipping from his lap. He was still in his clothes from the day before, too worn out to have moved. She watched him in the dim morning light, this dangerous, complex man who had unexpectedly become so vital to her, she had no idea what would happen next. The answer arrived 3 days later when James showed up at the penthouse with news that would alter everything. We have got a problem, he said, skipping the usual greetings. One of Volkov's top guys made it out. He is talking, spreading stories that you targeted his boss over a personal issue involving a woman. James shot a quick look at Lena. The story is getting around. People are doubting your leadership, saying you let a relationship cloud your judgment. Let them talk, Victor said with a wave of his hand. It is more than just talk. 3 of our biggest partners want to meet. They need to know you are still all about business, that you have not gone soft. That last word hung in the air like a heavy weight. Victor's face turned to stone. Tell them I will meet them tomorrow, all 3 of them at the same time. I will make it perfectly clear that my private life has no bearing on my business affairs, and Miss Hayes is staying with me, under my protection. That is not up for debate. After James left, Lena felt the room begin to shrink around her again. Their short period of peace was over. Reality, with its sharp edges and high stakes, had returned. This is what I was talking about, Victor said quietly. The price of being with me. I know. Lena walked over to him. But I'm not going to run. Not this time. You should be scared. I am, but I'm finished with letting fear dictate my life. She leaned in and kissed him. It was the first time she had been the one to start it. The kiss was gentle, tentative, and filled with all the words they did not know how to say. When they separated, Victor looked at her as if she had just worked a miracle. I love you, she said, and the words felt more natural the second time. I do not know if this is smart or safe or even logical, but I love you. I choose you, no matter what comes with it. Victor's only reply was to pull her into a tight embrace, holding on as if she were the one thing that kept him human. And perhaps she was. The meeting was arranged to take place at a warehouse in the industrial part of the city, a neutral spot that none of them owned. Victor spent the morning on the phone, his voice clipped and controlled as he made preparations. Lena watched from the penthouse window, trying to push away all the thoughts of how badly things could turn out. "You do not have to be there," Victor said for the third time, meticulously adjusting his cufflinks. "It would probably be safer for you here. We already agreed that there is no safe place for me." Lena turned away from the window. "And if this meeting is about me, if they think you have been weakened by our relationship, then I need to be there. Let them see me for who I am, not some story they have invented. They will try to use you against me. They will paint you as my weakness. Then we will prove that I am not." She went to him and straightened his tie, a tie that was already perfectly straight. "You told me you wanted something real. This is as real as it gets. Fighting for us is real. Go show them that choosing me was not a sign of weakness. Show them it was the strongest move you have ever made." Victor took her hands and pressed them against his chest, right over his beating heart. "You are either the bravest woman I have ever met, or the most foolish." "Maybe I am both." She managed a small smile. "I had a good teacher." They got to the warehouse an hour early. James and 6 other men did a thorough sweep of the building, checking for any hidden dangers and securing the perimeter. When the first partner showed up, Victor was standing in the middle of the vast, empty space with Lena right by his side. They were a united front, making a statement that was both a promise and a dare. The 3 partners arrived one after another within minutes, powerful men who each ruled a different part of the city's criminal underworld. Dmitry Klov controlled the ports. Raymond Torres was in charge of gambling and entertainment. And Chen Wei managed the financial networks, moving money through both legal and illegal systems with incredible skill. They came with their own bodyguards, eyeing each other like predators who were being forced to share hunting grounds. But all eyes in the room swiveled to Victor and Lena. "So," Kozlov began, his English thick with an accent, his gaze cold and calculating. "This is the woman who launched a war." "Her name is Lena Hayes," Victor stated, his polite tone laced with steel. "And she did not start a thing. Vulov chose to target someone I protect. I simply delivered the proper response." "Proper?" Torres let out a humorless laugh. "You dismantled his whole organization for a waitress. That is not a business move, Kane. That is pure emotion. Emotion makes men careless." Victor's expression remained unchanged. "Allow me to be clear. My choice to remove Vulov was not about feelings. He broke the most basic rule of our world. He went after what is mine. If I had let that slide, every small-time thug in this city would assume they could attack my people and face no repercussions." "Your people," Chenwei interjected, his voice quiet and sharp. "Is Miss Hayes one of your people? Or something more? The whispers suggest she is now a significant liability." Lena felt Victor stiffen next to her, but she spoke first. "I am standing right here. If you want to know who I am to Victor, maybe you should ask me instead of discussing me like a piece of furniture." The 3 men fixed their full attention on her. The intensity of their stare was a physical weight. They were predators sizing up a new variable, deciding if she was worth the risk. "Bold," Kozlov noted. "I appreciate boldness, but it does not resolve the issue. What are you to him? A simple distraction? A moral compass? Or a vulnerability to be used against him?" "I am the one who reminds him why he built this entire enterprise," Lena said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline rush. "It was not for power or money. It was for control. The power to shield those who could not shield themselves. Victor extended mercy to me when he had no reason to. He offered help when it gave him no advantage. Those decisions, those very human actions, do not make him weak. They separate him from men like Vulov, who only recognize the language of violence. A fine speech, Torres sneered. But kindness does not forge empires. Fear does. Respect does. And at this moment, many are questioning if Cain still has a firm grip on either. Then those people are fools. Victor's voice was like a whip crack in the vast warehouse. For 10 years, I have kept this city stable. I managed territories, mediated conflicts, and preserved order when letting chaos reign would have been simpler. And I did it all without becoming a monster who harms innocents just to make a statement. Vulov crossed a boundary. I made him disappear for it. That is not weakness. That is the kind of strength that prevents this city from collapsing. But you did it because of her, Chenwei said softly, nodding toward Lena. Therein lies the problem. A business choice was driven by personal attachment. How can we be certain you will not do so again? How can we trust your judgment is not clouded? Because my judgment has never been clearer, Victor declared with finality. For 10 years, every choice I made was based on cold, hard logic. No connections, no feelings, only profit and survival. And where did that lead? To an empire founded on fear, to partners whose loyalty is just a product of their own terror, to a life where I trust no one and nothing is important beyond the next contract, the next enemy, the next maneuver. He took a breath, and when he spoke again, his tone was different. It was less controlled, more genuine. Lena changed all of that. She reminded me there is more to this life than just holding power, that the correct choice is not always the most profitable one, and that protecting one person who truly matters is worth more than any image of being untouchable. Victor met each man's gaze. So yes, I got rid of Vulov because he targeted her, and I would do it again, not from weakness, but because I finally know what is truly worth defending. If that is an issue for any of you, state it now. We can resolve it right here, and whoever leaves this warehouse will be perfectly clear on where we all stand. A deep and threatening silence filled the room. Lena felt the potential for violence hanging in the air, a storm waiting to break. Chenwei was the first to break the stillness. He stepped closer, his intelligent eyes scrutinizing Victor. You have changed, Cain. That is undeniable. The only question is if it is for the better or for the worse. Better, Victor replied instantly. Go ask my crew. Ask them if I am fairer now, more reasonable, more inclined to find answers that do not require bloodshed. I have not become soft. I have become strategic. There is a world of difference. Then show us, Torres demanded. Prove this is not all about the woman. Prove you can still make the tough calls. What do you have in mind? Torres produced a tablet, called up a file, and passed it to Victor. Lena could not see what was on the screen, but she saw Victor's jaw tighten as he reviewed it. This is about Marcus Chen's operation, Victor stated, his voice flat. Your nephew. Chenwei gave a slow nod. The one who has been stealing profits and feeding information to our rivals. According to your own code, he should be removed. But he is blood, so I ask you, what is your move? It was a carefully laid trap. If Victor chose mercy, they would see weakness. If he called for death, they would say he had lost his way. There was no easy way out. After a long moment, Victor looked from the tablet to Chenwei. What do you want to see happen? The question visibly surprised Chenwei. What? He is your nephew, your family, Victor said. I am asking you what result you truly want. If this were strictly business, I would advise you to cut the liability. But we both know it is far more complex. So tell me what you really want. Chenwei considered this, his face a mask. At last he answered, I want him to change, to learn his lesson, to become better. But I am not sure that is even possible. Then let us find out, Victor said, handing the tablet back. Offer him a choice. He can leave this city for good, with enough capital to start a clean life somewhere new. Or he can stay and try to repair the damage he has caused, to prove his loyalty, and to earn back his position. But you make it clear, a second betrayal means there will not be a third chance. That part is business. But allowing him the chance to redeem himself, that is family. And it is not weak to value them both. Kozlov actually laughed. You really have changed, Kane. The man you used to be would have wanted his head for the principle of it. The man I used to be built his kingdom on graves, Victor said quietly. I am trying to build something that will endure. And empires that last are founded on more than just fear. They are built on loyalty, on respect, and on the idea that people make mistakes and some deserve an opportunity to correct them. And if this mercy is viewed as weakness, Torres pushed, if others see this as their chance to make a move, then I will give them a personal reminder of how dangerous mercy can be, especially when it is offered by choice. Victor's smile was sharp as a razor. I am not soft. I am strategic. There is a difference, and anyone who forgets it will learn that lesson the hard way. The three partners looked at each other, a silent conversation passing between them that Lena could not decipher. Finally, Chenwei offered his hand. Strategic, I can handle, he said. Welcome back, Kane. The real you this time. Kozlov and Torres also extended their hands. Lena felt the hostile tension in the room dissolve into something like an agreement. It was not friendship or even trust. It was an understanding. A recognition that Victor was a different man, but no less formidable. One last thing, Torres said as they prepared to depart. The woman remains with you? She does, Victor answered. Then you had better keep her well protected. News of this meeting will get out, and others will try to use her as your weak point. They will test you. Let them try, Victor said softly. They will discover the same thing Vulov did. The partners and their guards departed, leaving the warehouse feeling huge and silent. Lena finally released a breath she had not even realized she was holding. That was horrifying, she whispered, but it was necessary. Victor held her tightly, and she felt the stress finally leave his body. And you were amazing. I meant every word about you making me a better man. I know. She relaxed against him. So, what's our next move? Now we live our lives. Cautiously, but together. The weeks that followed were a mix of caution and discovery as they learned to live a life that was half in shadow, half in light. She moved into his penthouse but kept her apartment as a fallback, spending most of her nights with him. He protested, but she went back to the diner, needing the routine, even though customers now pointed and whispered. Emma was the first one to say what they were all thinking. You seem different, she noted one quiet evening. Happier. Scared, but happy. Is it possible to be both? I think it is the only way to be happy when you love a dangerous man. Emma refilled the coffee makers with an expert hand. Are you afraid he will harm you? No. I am afraid someone will harm me to get to him, or him to get to me, or that this whole thing will crumble because it is just too impossible. But you are staying. I am staying, Lena said with a faint smile. Because somehow, he is worth it. Victor was slowly changing his entire operation, moving toward legal businesses, reducing the violence, and creating something that could one day be completely legitimate. It was a slow, risky job. Each change made him vulnerable, giving his enemies a chance to attack. But he was dedicated. I am building all this for you, he said to her one night on the penthouse balcony, looking at the city lights. For us. So that maybe, someday, you will not have to be afraid anymore. I will always be a little afraid, Lena said truthfully. But that is fine. Fear shows me what is at stake. It means I am not taking any of this lightly. 3 months after the warehouse confrontation, Victor invited Lena to his office, his real one, in the downtown building for his legitimate companies. She had never been there, and it felt strange to walk through doors with his name etched on the glass. I have something for you to see, he said, bringing up some files on his computer. I have been working on this since the attack. since I saw how fragile our lives are. What is this? It is a foundation, supported by my legal businesses. It gives medical help to people who cannot afford it. People like you were. People like my brother was before his life went wrong. Victor turned the screen for her to see. I want you to run it. Lena stared at the papers, the rules, the funding details, and the goals. It was a real, solid plan to use Victor's dark money to do some actual good. Why choose me? Because you know how it feels to be invisible, to need help with nowhere to go, to face impossible choices because the system has failed you. Victor took her hands. Because you have more courage and kindness in your injured leg than most people have at all. And because I want to build something good with you, something that is about more than just wealth and influence. This would change her whole life. I know you would have to leave the diner and spend your days managing the foundation instead of serving coffee. It would draw you more into my world and make your connection to me more public. He paused. But it would also give you a mission, a real power to help people just like I helped you. Lena looked over the plans more closely. The foundation was real, properly set up, and well funded, designed to make a genuine impact on people's lives. It was exactly what she had hoped to do before the accident took away her dreams. Yes, she said, I will do it. Victor's smile was bright and completely open. I was hoping you would say that. The foundation started 6 months later, with Lena as the director. The first person they assisted was a single mother whose son needed an operation she could not afford, an operation that would let him walk and play without pain, to live a life not defined by his limits. Lena cried as she signed the approval form. This is what it feels like, Victor said as he watched her. Using power for good instead of for control. I had forgotten. Then remember this, Lena replied. Every time you have a tough choice, every time your business gets dark, remember this. Remember that you are capable of more than just violence. He kissed her right there in the small foundation office, surrounded by the files of people who needed help. Lena felt something inside her settle. The last piece of accepting who they were. Not perfect, not safe, but real, and trying to be better. 1 year after she had collapsed at his feet in the diner, they stood together at the foundation's anniversary party. It was a small event, with just the staff. The room was filled with volunteers and the very people they had uplifted. Emma was present with her brother, his health restored by the foundation's help. Marcus from the cafe was there with his wife. Even Dr. Chen attended, looking at Lena with a quiet, proud smile. You have touched so many lives, Dr. Chen remarked. Yours included. Lena answered, Well, Victor was the one who changed my life first. I am only trying to pass on the kindness. You are doing much more. You are creating a legacy that will survive us all. Dr. Chen looked over at Victor. And you have transformed him too. In all my years knowing him, I have never seen him observe anyone the way he does you. How does he observe me? As if you are the resolution to a question he had stopped trying to answer. As if you are his home. Hours later, on the penthouse balcony where countless conversations had taken place, Victor guided Lena outside. Below them, the city unfolded, a tapestry of light and dark where millions of lives played out. I have a gift for you, he stated, retrieving a small box from his pocket. Lena's pulse quickened. Victor, this is not what I think it is. Or, it might be, but the time isn't right. He opened it, showing a simple, silver key that held obvious weight. This belongs to a house beyond the city, far enough for us to vanish if we ever had to, near enough to reach in an emergency. I purchased it 6 months ago, turning it into a genuine safe place. Somewhere a new start would be possible if this all collapsed. Why give this to me at this moment? Because I need you to understand that you will always have a choice. You can remain in this world with me, with the foundation, the delicate balance, the unending threat of danger. Or if the burden becomes too great, you can take that key. Begin again in a new place. I will ensure your safety. I will provide everything you could ever need, and I will not come after you unless I am invited. Lena accepted the key, its significance heavy in her hand. You would actually let me leave. I would actually let you decide, every single day. That is the essence of love. To offer someone the liberty to walk away, while hoping they choose to stay. She curled her fingers around the metal, then drew Victor into a kiss that was gentle and profound, filled with her new understanding of love. She knew now that it was complex and perilous, and demanded a bravery she never knew she had. It meant selecting someone daily, fully aware of how it could cause pain. It meant realizing that sometimes true strength was in holding your ground instead of fleeing. I am staying right here, she murmured against his lips. Not just for today or tomorrow. Not until one of us feels this is no longer worth the fight. And if that moment never arrives, then I suppose you are stuck with me. She offered a smile. Forever feels both frightening and absolutely perfect. It certainly does, Victor agreed, touching his forehead to hers. I never imagined I would have this. Someone who sees every part of me, the monster and the man, and still chooses me. Someone who inspires me to be a better person without insisting I change. I never imagined I would walk again, much less alongside a man who views me as strong, not damaged. Lena shifted back, putting weight on her leg as she sometimes did, just to be sure it was solid. We are both filled with surprises. They remained there as the sky darkened, two souls from impossible worlds who had discovered something authentic in the chaos. The foundation was set to carry on its mission. Victor's enterprises would continue their path toward legitimacy. Dangers would arise and fade. Their existence would stay complex, risky, and uncertain, but they would confront it as a team. 1 year later, Victor proposed for real, with a ring, and with words that brought tears to Lena's eyes. She accepted instantly. They were married in a quiet gathering, surrounded only by their most trusted friends. Emma served as Lena's maid of honor, while James was Victor's best man. As they recited their vows, promising to select one another no matter what the future held, Lena had a profound realization. She had believed her own story concluded the night she fell in that diner. She assumed her existence would be forever small, agonizing, and constrained. But that moment was not a conclusion. It was a new start. The start of discovering her own resilience beyond her injuries. The start of grasping that true courage is not living without fear, but choosing to move forward in spite of it. The start of finding love where she least anticipated, with a man whose empire was founded on force, now learning to build a legacy on something greater. 5 years after their wedding, Lena was in the Foundation's new headquarters, a comprehensive center with operating rooms, physical therapy spaces, and a team who embraced her goal of helping those the system overlooked. She observed a young woman taking her first steps after major surgery, encouraged by therapists who celebrated each unsteady motion. Victor came to her side and took her hand. Does this remind you of someone? It does. Every single day. Lena held his hand tighter. That girl who was unable to run, well, she is in charge now, figuratively speaking. Figuratively, she repeated with a grin. Although my leg is quite strong these days. Dr. Chen reports I have 94% functionality, which feels perfect to me. You have always been perfect, Victor said, drawing her in, injured leg and all. You are a liar. I am honest. There is a distinction. He placed a kiss on her temple. Are you ready to head home? Always. They departed the Foundation side by side. Lena's stride was now even and assured. Victor's hand rested firmly on her back. The city enveloped them, as perilous and intricate as ever, still filled with darkness that could threaten to overwhelm the light. Yet they had mastered navigating that darkness as one. As they drove home to the penthouse, toward the life they had forged from difficult decisions and improbable compassion, Lena recalled that night at the diner. She remembered collapsing at Victor's feet and uttering the 3 words that altered her world. I cannot run. She had been mistaken. She could run, she could walk, she could stand tall and meet any challenge with a strength she fought hard to win back. But the truly wonderful, almost miraculous part was that she no longer had to do it alone. She had found someone to stand beside her. He had revealed that compassion could be the most potent weapon, not from weakness, but from its power to remake monsters into men and to turn broken girls into warriors. He had chosen love over dominance and discovered it was his most courageous act. Together, they were creating something unimaginable that night when their worlds came crashing down. They were forging a life that had true meaning. They had a love that was worth defending, and a future that demonstrated how the most difficult journeys can lead to the most magnificent destinations. Not because the path is simple, but because the destination is earned, one courageous step at a time. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.